Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to the other side of the wormhole, the lost thoughts of the But Why Though podcast. Basically, what didn't make it in the episode. Today's episode is going to be on episode 13, but Bioware Matters. So, at first when I started doing this, I was only doing the episodes that I had... Let me fix my camera a little bit before I get there. Alright. First, I was only going to do the episodes that I had recorded, whatnot, but I mean, I've enjoyed doing this, and so I kind of want to go back and look at some of the episodes and maybe, I guess, get a different perspective and whatnot on some of the stuff that we did beforehand. For those of you that didn't join or that have never seen any of these videos, basically this is a little, I guess, a little side show that I do. I guess I have to introduce myself. My name is Matt. I'm your host. I'm part of the But Why Though podcast. But anyways, when we do these episodes, we try to make them only about an hour long for everybody, so that way we know people can be listening for so long. So I started this up to basically extend it past what we talked about in the episode, because a lot of the topics we have extend way past just an hour of talking. And so, basically, it's a little sideshow. It can be found on our website, on butwhythoughpodcast.com, and also on our YouTube channel at But Why Though. And, and whatnot. This is also going to be, basically, this is live on Twitch TV, on the But Why Though podcast channel, / Twitch TV. So obviously we'll have some interaction. It's not going to be, there's going to be hardly any editing, if anything. It's basically just going to be a live show with interaction. Obviously there's chat and whatnot. So, if I happen to stop, looks like I'm reading something, or I answer questions or have anything, then that will happen. Excuse me. Feel a little bit rusty. It's been about a week since I've done this. I also had basically... Since I wasn't on any of these other shows, it took me a little while for one to select the shows that I want to do, to pick which one to start with, and I'm not as familiar with all the shows that we've done. Not so per se, like, I knew we did them, but the topics, like, today in Bioware, I'm going to talk about Bioware and some of the things I know about Bioware, but I'm probably going to end up somewhere else, because some of the stuff they talk about, I'm not unfamiliar with, so I'm going to be learning along with you guys. I call this show The Other Side of the Wormhole because basically we look at we start somewhere and we don't know where we're going to end up at. Basically, there's a lot of research done. I end up reading tons of articles. Like I said, I'll start with Bioware and who knows where we'll end up at. Hopefully we can learn some things along the way. It's been a rough week. It's only Tuesday. June 13th. So yeah, so I'll go ahead and get started here. We did an episode on Bioware, like I said, and it's episode 13. For those of you that haven't listened to this episode, hopefully you take the time to do it. You can find our podcast on iTunes, on Stitcher, our website, and pretty much every app you can think of. Just kind of fixing my little OBS type stuff. Also, there will be music in the background. For those of you unfamiliar, it helps me, it's kind of soothing, it kind of helps me talk, kind of keeps going. Obviously, we have the promo image from the actual episode 4. So yeah. So basically, we started with Bioware. For those of you who don't know what Bioware is, obviously, it's a video game developer, and basically located in Canada. So Bioware Canada. It was founded in 1995. So I guess we want to do this because at the time, the people that were doing this episode really enjoy Bioware. I think Mass Effect Andromeda just came out, and obviously they love the Mass Effect series. We'll obviously get into that later. So they kind of start off with the history of Bioware, the engines, I guess Baldur's Gate, and basically how brought the defined or revived Western RPG. The problem I have with this, I guess, section right here is, as much as they talk and they brought this was, this was a great game and defined all this stuff and role playing and best role player game, Baldur's Gate, 1999. Kind of just left out Bethesda, that started doing role playing games and at least made 3 games before 1998, and actually started the Elder Scrolls series in 1994 with Arena, which also won RPG, or best role playing game of the year, computer game of the year. And then they actually released Daggerfall, their second one, during the time, I believe it was in 1996, and also won quite a bit of Best Role-Playing Game of the Year awards. So Bethesda was around and actually had a game out, an RPG, and a Western-type RPG before Bioware was even founded. It was kind of a lapse. I also like Bethesda more than Bioware, so probably is a little biased, but I think the fact of the matter was they were actually around, and them two companies basically started the revival of RPGs, or just Western type RPGs. Now, actually, over the years, there seemed to be a rivalry that kind of grew between the two, per se, or at least it's what counted. I don't know how much it's a rivalry. I mean, I guess Mass Effect won a lot of awards, even though it kind of has a little different systems or setting and system and engine than the way the Elder Scrolls series works. The big thing with Dragon Age, which I don't even know if we actually cover in this episode, which is actually kind of disappointing now that I'm looking at it. Because I'm actually looking at our show notes, because like I said, I'm just kind of go over. Yeah, so looking at this, apparently Dragon Age, which was actually a very successful series for Bioware, is not even covered in this, which is odd. I was hoping to. I guess they just didn't want to or have time to, which I can understand, because obviously there's a lot of information to talk to. Bioware is a huge company. I played Dragon Age, the first two. I didn't play Inquisition because I was so hurt by the second one. The first one I loved, had a lot of great aspects. It was really in depth. It brought back just great, I guess, Western RPG feel. The story was amazing. The character interaction. It was kind of a little hard because you had to do almost the Holy Trinity type thing, but you had to do it by yourself. So instead of for those of you who don't know what the Holy Trinity is of RPGs, basically it means you have a DPS, a tank, and a healer. So basically your tank takes aggro, as they call it, or aggression, and takes a lot of your damage while the healer heals, and then your DPS, which are usually squishy, or characters that are more often to die, then just do a lot of your damage. Like I said, I'm sure there's other ways to play it, at least my concept of playing the first one, which was released a long time ago, I think back in 2000, and I'd have to look it up now, what it is. But anyways, that one's good. And so the second one, I was all excited for and everything. They released it, and it was awful. It was terrible. They kind of want to do this faster pace, action-based RPG type, I guess, because there is a genre between action RPGs. Actually, there's a few different genres of RPGs, because you have your action RPGs, which are kind of, you have I guess obviously action. Role-playing might not be as a big of aspect into it. You have your Western RPGs. Basically, for those of you, I guess I didn't even mention, RPG means role-playing game. So obviously, usually a lot of these games have a class, or they have a character you select, and you have, I guess, role-playing characteristics. So you can pick your skill set, pick what you wear, and kind of mold your character than the way you want to. There are some games with more aspects, some with less. These older games, like I talked about the Elder Scrolls series, they had lots of skills. D&D still type stuff has lots of skills and everything you can do. And the old school ones, which is why they brought up the, I guess, Baldur's Gate and D&D, is it's kind of this one it says of true turn-based combat, which is fine, but I think the other action-based is so I'm trying to see how the best way to explain this will be, because you have what is called turn-based combat and then real-time. Elder Scrolls, in the most part, was based in real-time. I guess that's a difference between how they want to do it. Elder Scrolls use this real-time, so if I press X, I hit. That's how it works, and as fast as I can do that, or whatever button you assign, or click a mouse. turn-based basically means that you pick something, it kind of does, you kind of take a turn and you like say, well, I want to use my weapon slash of X slash 5 thing, then you slash, then they choose, like, I don't know, swipe. These are generic terms, but you'd be surprised how much they're actually used for, like, attacks. And then they do it. The difference, turn-based is a little different, because at least from the D&D aspect of how they're doing it, I guess because if you've ever seen pen and paper, basically what they did is they tried to computerized pen and paper version of D&D, where if you've ever seen it, you know, you take it, you roll your dice, you know, and that's your turn based on your rolls. Whew. They also have another one, which is basically it's strictly turn-based, but also called like Japanese RPGs, and these are like your Final Fantasies, where all of a sudden, like when you go into combat, you go into like almost like an isolation area, to where then you pick and you fight somebody, like you pick this to do something like your swipe, like I said, and they do their slash, but you're like almost isolated outside the world. Usually, a lot of them have like nice, like fancy, like woo, like colors and screen goes, you know, some music around and whatnot. So these action RPGs usually try to be in more real time and not so much turn-based. Another difference they had was compared to the older ones, and at least Elder Scrolls has gone as well, because I'm more familiar with this, so I might talk about Bethesda more than I do Bioware, even though they kind of came in the same, coming up in the same time frame. Hopefully one day we will eventually do a Bethesda or even an Elder Scrolls episode. Look forward to it. Very familiar with that series. But it's like you roll a dice. So you have your skills, and it's a lot of math involved. That's why pen and paper stuff is involved. So essentially it's like I have I can use this sword. It does 10 damage, and I times it by my skill of like 15 out of 30, which gives me a percentage, which then you times it by, I don't know, if this character's armor, or you minus it from whatever this character's armor is, subtract it by, or times it by this way, and then you roll this die, and it has this percentage of, like, I don't know, let's say 95%. Then you take this dice, or however you want, and then basically you roll it. This is all built within the computer, it's all algorithms. And you press that button, and every time you press that button, the algorithm goes and it spits out an answer. And so 95%, if it goes true, that means bam, you make contact, you hit. And then if it goes false, which would be that 5% time, then all of a sudden you actually miss. And this actually frustrated a lot of people, especially when Elder Scrolls first came to like the gaming system, or I guess to console, because players weren't used to it. If you ever played the game Morrowind, which was the first one that came for console, people would sit there just swinging away, and you're like, why am I not hitting anything? It's like, because your skills suck and they take a math algorithm, and you need to do that stuff to actually hit something. So what RPGs have done, at least from what I've seen in the later years, is this whole action, I guess, real-time aspect, to where Dragon Age did the 2, and Dragon Age 2 did it, and why it was awful was your skills almost don't matter because you're gonna hit, because it's like physics and real. Like if I pick up this pen that I'm holding and I throw it at you, it's gonna hit you. Now what they did was that skill numbers and those algorithms, now instead of meaning whether they were hit or miss, they meant on how much damage they would do. So now instead of getting a percentage of 95% of hit or miss times whatever the damage is, times I guess whatever your crit, which means a critical strike, which means you do more damage, and that number, what they would do is you are automatically going to hit for 100%, but now you're going to take your weapon damage and you'll times that number times possibly your skill times possibly their armor, or minus the times of their armor or resistant damage resistance, and then they'll spit out that number. So if you're with no armor and 100% and great skill, let's say you have a sword that hits for 20. So every time you swing, you'll hit for 20. Well then, based on what armor they have, based on your skill, all of a sudden now when you hit them, it only hits for 10. Now, like I said, some of these things are not the exact formulas, obviously, but a lot of these RPGs that you do, they're literally just bunches of math and algorithm, which I guess is what's fascinating about RPG games to me, Because literally when you get to the end, especially when you start playing like MMOs, which Elder Scrolls eventually did move into, kind of weak. I'll enjoy it now. They've done a lot of revamping it, but it definitely was awful when it first came out. But anyways, so basically you get to the end and it's literally nothing but math of like, I need to level up these skills to get this right amount of weapons to beat this thing with this enchantments, and then if I do the calculation and all this, give me the best possible either DPS if you're a damage dealer, or the best possible like resistance or health wise if you're like a tank, or the best possible like I guess resource management / heal production, or even heal per second I guess if you're like a healer. And so like these people that like, the cool thing about when single player, when these games released, obviously they were free roam, you can do whatever you want. So it really didn't matter. So these math numbers, they mattered, you know, I'm guessing the grand scheme of things, whether you make strikes, hit people and whatnot. But they didn't matter as much as what they do, like when you move into the MMO range, where basically it almost sucks because when you get to the end, it's almost like pretty much there's like 3 or 4 builds that work. And basically a build is kind of how you kind of build your character, like these stats need to be leveled, these stats need to be low. And unfortunately the RPG aspect, it's there and you need it, but then it kind of, the higher up you get in the game and the more stuff, it kind of dwindles down and just turns a giant Excel spreadsheet. There's been, if you ever played WoW, you can see, and I'm sure you can find online, just calculations of if I plug in this, what numbers and stats will I have, because stats matter. But back to the whole point of like the Dragon Age 2 and some of the Elder Scrolls. So they went away from like this whole like stats matter, hit or miss, you know, resist or not resist, into I can hit no matter what, and as long as I can stay alive, even if I never did anything, I can beat you to death doing 2 damage, like with the staff, even if I have no staff skills. So it's been a little disappointing to hear that. And so whatnot. Whew. I know I haven't done this a while. I gotta get back in a rhythm here. But yeah, that was the original, I guess the 1990s version of some of these RPGs and how they work. Which I believe is the top left picture if you're watching the screen. They move into the 2000s, which ends up being Star Wars: The Knights of the Old Republic. I mean, there's a lot of information here. Released on PC, Xbox, and Mac, 2004. Can get on apparently now on Android and iOS. But you know what else you can get on iOS and Android? The But Why Though podcast. But it was set. This was set 4,000 years before the films. I think these were all single player. I mean, apparently it was amazing. I never actually played this one. Apparently it's the first Star Wars RPG on PC. Popularity helped helped Star Wars Galaxy take off at the same period. That's where we get to. Because this game apparently led to what they now have is the Knights of the Old Republic, which is the actual MMO, which I have played. See, so Bioware did launch a lot of things, which is cool. Which is weird because I don't even know if they make it. I wish I could see Star Wars: The Old Republic. We get the MMO. Oh, so Bioware actually does release the MMO in 2011, so they do make it. Well, the reason I look at that because Elder Scrolls, ZeniMax, which is a parent company that owns Bethesda, who makes the Elder Scrolls kinds of stuff, actually does, and I believe that's some other company, does their actual MMO and not Bethesda. They just use all of the Bethesda stuff and give them credit for like the lineage, the history, and the everything else, but they don't actually like do the game like they do like the other stuff, like Elder Scrolls or even the Fallout series they have now. Another fun fact, I need to quit doing these fun facts about Bethesda. I'm just gonna do the whole episode on them, and we won't have to do it. But apparently they started out as their first few they started out one in the 80s, but their 6 of their first like 10 games were actually like sports games. They like first game they ever like helped develop and finish was John Madden Football. Who would have thought Madden in I guess the early 90s to 80s to what it is now with EA Sports was started by another company, Bethesda, or developed by another software company, Bethesda, which now is known for RPGs. Crazy. It was a weird time back in video games. Back there was a lot more diversity, I guess. People did a lot more games. But anyways, the MMO, it was cool. They kind of do the traditional way, but they ended up with a free-to-play model, which I like free-to-play models per se, and I get why people do it, because you need to keep the game alive. It also unfortunately means my game's dying if we go to free-to-play model. But I didn't like theirs because their free-to-play was too restrictive, and to get the content to be able to play everything that you wanted to, you basically needed a subscription. And the reason you say, oh, well, free-to-play, yeah. Well, they capped so many things off, and they didn't allow you to buy certain things to be effective. And the reason I say this is because I used to play Lord of the Rings online, which is another one. I played a lot of MMOs at this point. There's another one I played, which obviously, unfortunately, I enjoyed the game. I thought it was great. Apparently, it's been going on for 10 years. But it's never really... Oh, where's my pen? Never really that populated, I guess, and just never took off. But the reason I like that free-to-play model is because a lot of times what they restrict is currency, leveling. Oh, not so much leveling per se, but like zonage, like where you can go in quest lines. And I guess some like mounts usually are, and travel, and some like nice little stuff. But in Lord of the Rings, like, you could only have like 2 gold. And then they have like usually 3 different tiers, which are basically free to play. So you spent 0 money. You can get you can have a max currency of 2 gold, which is equivalent to like nothing in most of these games. You know, you can only do like the first 4 zones, and probably you cap out at like level 30 or something like that. Then they have like what is a premium one thing, which means you've spent some money. So you kind of are above that. Usually they higher the cap. Well, now you can hold maybe, I don't know, let's say 20 gold. And you still don't probably get any zones. Maybe they add 1 extra zone to you for you to. Maybe you get another like dungeon, because you can only do like 2 from free to play. Now you can do 3 in per se. And so the premiums are, kind of a little incentive to go spend, like $5. Heck, when DC Universe released on consoles, which is another MMO, that's kind of another one that's been around for like years, but overall it's just kind of like, who's still playing these games? And it's bad, because I'm like, I played them and I'm like, oh, they're fun, but they're just not amazing. But especially DC Universe, I was actually really hooked into it, but there's wasn't a lot of content. I'm like, man, for 5 years, I think we got the year in like year 4 or 5 or close to it now. Like, there's wasn't that much content. You hit max level at 30. I mean, that was it for like all the expansions. And then, I guess when you get done, you go into like raids and stuff, which was cool if you had the people. If not, you had to queue, and literally it was just like, there was just nothing to do. So it kind of sucked. But anyways, that one was funny because they had such a clog of everybody wanting to play it, and it was more popular than expected for console. Because consoles nowadays, like the PS4 and Xbox Ones, and obviously moving forward, they're actually powerful enough to where they can port a lot of the PC games that used to not be able to run on consoles. That's why you're getting these MMO type games on consoles. Like, literally on my console, I've been able to play Neverwinter. Addicted to that game. Very addicted to that game till the economy crashed. DC Universe is on there as well. Elder Scrolls was able to actually release a game on there as well. What was the other one that they do? Star Trek Online. There it is. I actually was interested in that one, but never got around to playing it. It looked cool, and then it kind of looked, so I wasn't sure. But yeah, so these games are actually being able to be ran on like console systems, which is pretty cool. I think a lot of them have been adapted pretty well, at least from what I've been able to play. So they're not as bad. Because I just know, like, when I played World of Warcraft, and especially even Knights of the Old Republic, to me, trying to play those on a console would be almost damn near impossible because of the abilities and like how many buttons you need. So I don't know if these games have just been limited in how they did it and enabled them to be on console, or yeah, because like, wow, you could have every single skill you ever had. You just press 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0, control 1 2 3 4. You can just assign all the buttons. Whereas like Elder Scrolls, you can only have 5 skills at one time. And then you can flip a bar and have another 5, and that's it. Same with DC Universe. You're only allowed to have like 2 or 3. Well, their skills were a little different, but yeah, you only allowed to have 5 per se. And that was more of like almost not necessarily a button masher, but kinda, because it took a lot of like, Y equals this combo, X equals this combo. So yeah. And then Neverwinter was the same way. You only had like 5. Actually, Neverwinter, I think you only got like 3 skills, and then like a special. Which kind of sucked playing that with those games, because I did like the WoW thing where I could use my variety of everything I was given. Whereas these ones with 5, it's kind of like, Which kind of goes back to that whole thing with numbers and building wise, where you're like, I have 25 skills, I can choose 4 of them. And if I choose the wrong 4, the incorrect 4, my character could suck. And then, especially when you get to the end type stuff and play with lots of people, it's not that they don't want your creativity and cool, but you become useless, unfortunately. And you can't actually progress or beat anything. Like, we had a person we played with in our Elder Scrolls guild, and they were our healer, but they really wanted to do some DPS, because that's not what when they made their character, they wanted to be a wizard and shoot a bow, because that's the way the game was promoted, because you can be anything, and the diversity and stuff. Well, come to find out, basically you can't do that. You need to make specific builds, or you become a terrible healer, and then if you're a terrible healer, we die. But then if you try to DPS to help us, we have no healing, and the whole thing fails, and you just end up wasting a lot of time. Then you're like, well, I don't like this person. Well, it's not really fair to them, but it's what happens in these games. You get classes, I guess would be the word. Get elitists, especially in those games, which is cool. Why it goes back to the single player games, which they like. That a lot of these MMOs branched off with, where you could be anything and do whatever. Because you know what? If I played the old Elder Scrolls game or played the old Baldur's Gate, if I wanted to be a healer that shot a bow, I could do that, and who cares? Problem is, you can't do that when I have 3 other people that I'm supposed to heal, and I'm shooting arrows. Because we all took arrows to the knee and wasted a lot of time. So, side note, if you ever decide to be a healer in MMO and you carry a bow or something, please don't ever see me. We'll throw my controller at you. Or whatever I'm using at the time. Don't mean to be mean or rude, but unfortunately it just sucks because you can't beat anything. Because you just can't do stuff. Fixing my camera a little bit. So off of that, more or less traditional MMO. Oh, I don't even know where I got from there. Oh yeah, my bad. That's another thing. If you haven't noticed, it seems like I'm all over the place, which I kind of am, but I try to at least form some train of thought, obviously, and where I'm going with things. This is obviously why I say it's the other side of the wormhole, because when I do a lot of this research, or when I'm talking and thinking about things, you kind of travel through a wormhole where I'm like, oh yeah, Star Wars, cool. Next thing I know, I'm like down this wormhole talking about some person who wanted to be a healer shooting a bow, and I'm like, oh, I want to beat you with the stick. Yeah, so that's another reason why I enjoy this show. I don't know how it is for people. I'm hoping you can learn quite a bit and stuff at different types of things. Whew. Yeah, so then they move on from Star Wars, obviously the canon is. They go in the Jade Empire. It was considered a dream project for the Bioware founders, released in the 2005 for Xbox, PC version. I honestly did not like this game. I didn't play it that much, but I did not like it. I mean, apparently, looking at the show notes, they enjoyed the game. That was cool, and I'm sure it was fine. I didn't like this game. I didn't care for it. Yeah. Which leads more to basically BioWare's next big project, as far as I know. Well, obviously, we can talk about Dragon Age, which was in there between this thing, I guess, before Mass Effect, which would be their next big project, I believe. But Dragon Age, first one was great, second one tanked. Did awful. A lot of people felt betrayed. To me, it's probably one of the worst games and one of the biggest letdowns ever. like, I literally did not play Dragon Age Inquisition, which I heard was actually a great game and went back to their roots because I hated Dragon Age 2 so much. So bad. The only thing you should ever do with a Dragon Age 2 disc is throw it out your window and use it as a frisbee. Actually use it as part of like skeet shooting. That would be better. Better use. Anyways, Mass Effect. So Bioware's next, I guess, I'm assuming their next one. Obviously, intertwined, but their biggest project they had going on for their, and the biggest franchise and what they're almost at this day and age gets popular for, and one of the main reasons why they did this episode was Mass Effect, which is a science fiction action role-playing third-person shooter that turned into a series released for 360, PlayStation 3, and Microsoft Windows and whatnot. I am not a big Mass Effect fan per se when it comes to playing the game. I tried to play Mass Effect 1 4 times. I just couldn't do it. I don't know why. I don't know if it was the gameplay, the controls. There was a lot of dialogue in these games, so there's definitely a lot of character development, voice acting, a lot of player choice, which is great. And that's what you want in RPG. You want games. That's why some people have trouble with the MMO type thing, and it looks weird compared to the single player one, because when you do these giant single player games, RPGs, the game like revolves around you and your choices. And that's what's great with the role-playing aspect, You can choose to save a character versus killing this character. Kill this one and save this one. And there's consequences on each side. Mass Effect has done a great job with doing that. And the funny thing is, about the Mass Effect series, is despite not playing it, I've actually watched people play it quite a bit, and actually enjoy more watching people and watching people play it than I have actually ever playing the game. Maybe I should actually go back and attempt to try to play all of these since they've been coming. I might enjoy it the second time or the 7th time I go around. But I couldn't get into it. I tried. I remember one time my brother and I went to the store right after Mass Effect 3 released. And we were like, wow, this is a great deal. This game only came out like a month ago. It's like $20, yeah. My brother bought it. He's like, I'm gonna do it. We always kept seeing him on sale. Like, this has got to be something. This is a great game. Blah blah. We bought it because we knew we didn't play the other ones. He tried it and goes, "Oh, this game's awful. I hate this thing." The funny thing was, and he goes, "I now see why it's $20." I couldn't do it either. The funny thing was, he played it, didn't like it, came back. I think he ended up buying all 3 games and like forced his way through all 3 of them. And now I think he loves the series. Not really 100% sure and all, but I know he's beat all of them. But it's just funny because I remember we just did not enjoy the games at first. I didn't enjoy. I feel like I said, I've watched people play. For those of you that watch Twitch more often and not just me and bigger type things, bigger streamers obviously than just this little But Why Though podcast Twitch channel. Gassy Mexican, who's a famous YouTuber and thing, it's like his favorite series, and usually at least once a year he does like a Mass Effect thing where he plays through all the games with voice acting. He did one to do Andromeda, basically called Max Effect: The Road to Andromeda or whatever, which is basically what just released their newest game for the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 at this time, which is part of the reason why this came out. Or this was, can't even talk. The episode was made. So yeah, but Mass Effect series has basically been held as one of the best games of the generation and series, RPG series of all time. I've never cared per se much of it. What I can tell you about it, as I do know, because there was basically, which I think unfortunately our co-host sometimes ran away with in this game. There was a lot of relationships, and you could have like romantic relationships, as they put it, alien sex in the games, which I guess is cool, and it took a lot of character development. But they got a little excited, at least in my opinion, about it. It was fun, but we don't need to go tell the world. But yeah, basically they allowed you to have a romantic relationship. Pretty much almost majority of the people in the game, or at least your crew-wise that you interacted with. So that was a cool aspect. And I bring that up because, one, it was a kind of a running joke about the game, which is why co-host brought it up quite a bit. But 2, when Mass Effect first came out, they still had the debate about psychology on people with video games and whatnot. And I just remember an author, I can't remember her name, psychologist, did not ever play this game or do anything, came out on TV and basically said, because you can have sex in the thing, this is promoting pornography and this is ruining children's minds. And Jeffrey Knightley, I wish I could remember his name correctly. If he ever watches this, I apologize. He basically was big, I believe, in G4 when that was around, and he's still out today. I mean, I just saw him talking about his 20. I think he was posting about his 20th time going to E3 now. He basically had to come on and try to defend this game about character development, and it took like 10 to 15 hours if you wanted to do this of gameplay and story mode to actually get to see these minute cutscenes or 30-second cutscenes where it's kind of like nothing. You may see like half a butt cheek, I think, maybe. You might get a side boob. Well, anyways, they weren't bad. They're definitely nothing worse than what you see on regular TV. But this lady made this huge deal about it. And I remember I ended up staying up for like, unfortunately, going down this wormhole, seeing this thing is hilarious. She wrote a book. Like I said, she was an author. The gaming company, especially the big game, did not like this. They went on Amazon and every other Barnes & Noble and just literally wrote reviews blasting her completely. Because the worst part, besides what she said, was she had not seen the scenes, had not even played the game, and basically somebody had told her this and said, go talk about it on live TV. Don't ever do that. Always, if somebody says go talk about something on live TV, especially that might sound controversial and they haven't told you and you haven't looked at anything, in other words, don't ever do that. Always do your research. You might want to think about it. But I remember reading reviews for hours and hours, and people are like, this book is awful. I've never read it, 1 star. And I just remember there was like 20,000, 30,000 reviews. And to me, it was a great moment because it showed that, one, the gaming community stood up for itself and saying, you can't just say all this stuff, especially considering the whole like violent video game thing that went on for years and years. And then 2, if you're really gonna come and try to say all this stuff, you better be ready to read do your research and actually play these things and be aware of what happens. Lo and behold, after they had a debate on the whole deleting all the reviews, do everything, she had to come out and say an apology. This is no worse than like Family Guy, I believe, are her exact words. But all her accountability and credibility was done. So yeah. Also, I'm noticing reading these show notes, people don't know how to spell correctly, and there's a lot of misspelled words. Literally, the first word is misspelled of brief history. So yeah. But yeah, so then they make the first one. Oh, that's all they even talk about. They didn't talk about the other ones. Yeah. Well, I guess they did, but they wrote them all on together. The next big controversial Mass Effect thing was a Mass Effect 3 ending. Unfortunately, I fell asleep to the ending. I'm assuming people probably just died or something. Anyway, people hated the ending. That's the way Bioware wanted to write it. Apparently, people didn't like it. And so they literally, unfortunately, what I didn't like is they caved in and they made an alternate ending to make everybody happy. So, yeah. Sorry, I'm getting a drink. I'm also checking chat, same thing, 'cause I saw some people laughing and whatnot, apparently. But yeah. A few other things they had. They actually came out with some films, some little comic type stuff that spun off from these from this Mass Effect thing. It's a very big deal, which led to Andromeda, obviously, which unfortunately had a lot of controversy as well. I don't know if they talk about it in some of these other episodes, because unfortunately I feel like they had a run where they talked about Bioware Mass Effect Andromeda like 3 times in a month. But apparently the facial animations were horrible. and people didn't like it. And then thing. All I know is, unfortunately, it didn't flop, but it definitely didn't meet expectations, unfortunately. Which is sad, because now I'll never know exactly what happens, because I'll probably never play the game, which is horrible on me. But, I brought up Gassy Mexican, a popular streamer who loved playing these games. He's literally decided he's going to beat the game off stream because he doesn't want to listen to the feedback of people criticizing and mocking the game and whatnot. Not that he's saying the game is great, but just annoying when you're trying to play a game and interact and have fun and whatnot, and you're having to listen to people say this game is trash. Totally agree with that. Trust me, we see it before with stuff. We've recorded episodes and we've had to ban people. As great as Twitch is in this interaction type ordeal, which I'm doing now, you get the negative side as well. Which I guess is kind of like what we try to do in the podcast, is we want to bring and shine light to things, but you also want to kind of talk about some of the controversies and why things can be, I guess, bad. Not necessarily bad, but I guess wrong would be an answer. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah. So that was about this is Bioware episode. I was not on this episode. Like I said, it might not seem as in-depth. It might be a little more tangenting because I wasn't on these episodes. But I figured I wanted to make some more videos and go over this, maybe get a different perspective. I also feel people should listen to these, and I don't always necessarily agree with some of these things. Like me, I was never the biggest Bioware fan. I'm not a fan that they brought up all this stuff at the beginning and revolutionizing things when Bethesda, who I am kind of biased towards, was actually around before them. But the whole point of this thing is also to correct and see where we made some mistakes and just talk about things as well. Bioware is a great company, though. They do a lot of fun stuff. I played some of their games. Like I said, I played some of their MMOs. Baldur's Gate, I've never actually played, but I've heard it's great. I didn't care for Jade Empire. I like the Mass Effect story. One day I will eventually forgive Dragon Age 2 and play Dragon Age Inquisition. One day. I don't know what day that is. Maybe if I win the lottery and I can sit around and do nothing and play games. It's sad. Because as you older, I can buy all the games in the world, but I don't have time to play hardly any. Which I think, fortunately, is why I've launched into. It seems like I play more these RPG type games and massive multiplayer online games or MMORPGs, because they're games that take a long time to beat, if you can ever beat them. Content is constantly coming out. Stuff is constantly renewing, and just allows you to do that without having to go I've moved away from some of the other single player games because I can just beat them earlier, and it sucks because I enjoy there's Lord of the Rings games that are coming out that look pretty cool, like Shadow of Mordor. I believe there's one just released coming out. I believe it's Shadow of Mordor. I believe it's the first one. I'm not sure what the new one is exactly. It looks great. It looks open world, but it just looks like something I can beat in a weekend. And maybe I have that personality of gaming to where if I sit down, I can play for 12, 14 hours straight, and I can play for probably almost a good 30, 35 hours in a weekend on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Probably not healthy, but that's how it is. And so, yeah, playing games that can last me longer than a weekend. I remember when I went back and played Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which one day I hope we actually mention that or talk about some of that stuff. I think those games are highly underrated. And then I think they're actually highly overpriced now for backwards compatibility. And I'm actually still sad because the first one messed up so much with the achievement-wise I couldn't finish it. And they added so many download content. But anyways, the point being, I played the second one, which actually does the Civil War storyline, which for any of you that watch the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all those movies, the actual storyline using all the Marvel characters is in that game. And I think it's actually pretty well done. But, I beat that whole game on hardest difficulty in a day. I don't want to say I'm even good, just the game just wasn't super long. And if you are any good at some of these games, or you played them or know what you're doing, they're just not hard to beat. And unfortunately, that's just kind of why I've moved away from some of these single player games. Now they've done somewhat well, but if I can beat a game in 20 hours, it's just, especially with the rising prices of games of $60, $65, depending on tax and everything else, not worth it. I'd rather pay $60, or actually, lately I've been playing free-to-play games, which I think are great, especially the way they're being released. These whole, sadly I've become a giant fan of the free-to-play model, where I can spend $10, $15 for what I want into these games, or if I want certain things, and I don't mind supporting them by doing that, which is funny because you end up being a sucker. Back to my brother in Neverwinter, he really wanted this dragon, which is a free-to-play game, but you buy these chest keys to get a dragon, or a drake as they call it, and I think he ended up spending like $150 on that damn game. One, he never got that dragon. I think to this day, if I ever get that dragon, or I know anybody get that dragon, I'm gonna send him a picture of that, just so he might quit. Might lose it. He don't even play the game anymore, but he might just lose his mind just for how much money. Because that's where these games do. Much of their free to play, they do get you with. Because eventually, at some point, you will end up spending more than what it costs for the game. But that one doesn't matter because it's free. But I think you get your money worth. I think Neverwinter I've spent maybe $20 total, and maybe a little more. And I have like 30 something days worth of gameplay. Worth it. Same with Ark. $30. I have like 70 days. Kind of miss Ark. Our editor, Asa Big Mountain, loves Ark and still plays Ark. I just don't have the time. It's just one of those games you have to dedicate your life to. One day. Lottery time. Or when this show takes off and I make like gazillion dollars, which you know I'm being facetious since I said gazillion, which actually if you go into the names of the aliens you get some crazy things, which I don't even know what they all are. I know there's a sextillion, I believe, gazillion, billion, million, prefixes and suffixes. So yeah, let's see. I'm gonna probably about wrap this up. Let me see if anybody actually has any questions or anything else before I finish this up. So I'm gonna look at chat here. Has anybody got anything? They're in here. All right. Doesn't look like it for today, so that's fine. All right, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up. This was the other side of the wormhole. The Lost Thoughts of the But Why Though podcast. This was episode 13, Bioware Matters. So that's what it is. Where you can find us at. My name is Matt. I'm your host of this little show. And it can be found on our YouTube channel, But Why Though PC or podcast, and the website, butwhythoughpodcast.com. And basically for these actual episodes, you can find them on iTunes. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us. It really helps us be found and lets us know. We also enjoy feedback. You can also find us on Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, TuneIn. I've talked about TuneIn. I will one day eventually figure out what TuneIn is and TuneIn. Obviously, they can also all be found on our website at butwhythoughpodcast.com. But we're also found for social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Feel free to drop by, DM us, shout out, do whatever, get our attention. You can find me at DATM18, DATT18 on Twitter. Feel free to message me if you have any questions. If you'd like any interaction with this show, or would you like to ask questions, comments, host, for either me or any of the other co-hosts, feel free to hit us up, or you can email us at info@butwhythoughpodcast.com. And yeah, well, thanks for having me, and have a good day. Bye.